Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the GCNC Worldview podcast. I am your host, Chris Day, co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective. Really happy to have everyone here. We're now well into the year, so I can't even say Happy New Year anymore, but happy to have Erin Butler, Chief Financial Officer of the Global Cannabis Exchange group of companies with us today. I haven't seen you since January 1, so I'm going to cheat, even though we're into February, and say Happy New Year. It's great to see you, Erin.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be on the podcast here.
Of course. So I think we should probably start telling the audience a little bit about what the GCX is all about. As people look at the international cannabis markets, like if you're in the US, you often think state to state. If you're
Mhm.
in Canada, you think about provinces. The EU is a little bit more structured around countries, but there's still a lot of conversation about what can and can't go between markets. Um, and for all intents and purposes, there is not a commodities exchange like you have for other agricultural products. And my impression of your business is that you're trying to help solve to some of those communication issues.
Yeah, exactly. So we started with the Canadian Cannabis Exchange about 4 years ago, and really the founders come from that place of commodity trading using live brokerages and exchanges to help to facilitate transactions. And so we took those same tenets that you'd see in any other agricultural market. And brought it to cannabis. And so we've been executing thousands of trades annually across our platform here in Canada. We work with over 500 LPs in Canada, 700 globally. And really, our role is to help to facilitate that bulk wholesale transaction. So, helping to create efficiencies in those supply chains, allow buyers access to a far broader range of sellers quite quickly, and then on the other side allow sellers access to a broader range of buyers. So obviously people can buy and sell across Canada with ease. Within the United States, it's very state focused. You can't move any THC product across state line. And then really now it's facilitating that movement into global medical markets, both on the CBD and THC side.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been actively involved in the market now for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And a very common call that I'll get from folks is, "Hey, Chris, do you know what the price is of whatever cannabinoid, flower, whatever? Um, because we're trying to find it in bulk, and do you know anybody that's selling?" So all of a sudden, you end up being like this strange broker in the background. And I should caveat this for everybody, between legal markets and legal operators.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and frequently the answer is, well, I know these folks in whatever market who do this. Maybe you can contact them directly. No idea what the price is because it fluctuates all the time and you're just going to have to work it out. Um, how are you guys addressing, and how do you sort of ascertain market price and all of the different logistical pieces of
Mhm.
getting cannabis from point A to point B for folks?
Yeah, so we actually just released our 2024 pricing report. It's a 30-page document. We've got great contributors from Arnaud with Canna Monitor, BFL Insurance, Niobe from a retail perspective. But really, what our platform enables is that price discovery, right? That is the purpose of exchanges, is that sort of anonymous but transparent data. So then we can segment by age of flower, THC, different terpenes, all of that type of stuff. We have that data and are able to provide that to our clients. So we just did our 2024 report. It also looks at a forecast of pricing Canadian bulk wholesale. into 2025, looking at, okay, what are the different factors that are going to drive that pricing? It's exports, it's how much supply is actually available in Canada, what's going on with our retail market. These are all macro factors that are going to impact that overall price. So really, so when groups come to us, then they're able to leverage that price discovery to make better business decisions, right? Should I be selling at this price point? Is it under market or over market? Is this a good opportunity or not? Should I be locking in down the curve and doing a contract at this point? Or should I maybe take a spot right now and see what happens in 6 months? So we can help advise on that. So that's a large part of why companies use us. And in the long term, we're also looking at price reporting from other groups globally. So we'll be doing the same sort of price reporting on the global side as well, different destination hubs. And then that takes into factor of, okay, what is the cost of shipping? What is the cost of certification built into the product, right? So GACP product obviously has a different value point than just GPP. And similarly, EU GMP product has an even higher value. So you get those sort of price differentials that we'll be building, that we build in for our clients to really help to just allow them to make good business decisions and also forecast out, what does their business look like in 6 months, a year from now.
Yep, it's great. And folks who listen to the podcast often have heard EU GMP
Yeah.
referenced a lot. I don't remember if we've distinguished between GACP and GPP for folks. So could you explain what that difference is?
Yeah, so I mean, just particular to Canada, all product grown in Canada is GPP. That's sort of built in with our Health Canada regulation, which is great for our LPs. That allows them, to be at a certain level of certification compared to growers, let's say in the United States. Many of them wouldn't necessarily be at that GPP, good production practices level. So that's a great, amazing level to have. GACP is just another certification level that is required, as a funnel into EU GMP product. It's sort of GACP is until the product is harvested, and then EU GMP is the next level of manufacturing on top of that. So we work with a lot of growers to get GACP certified, because then an EU GMP facility can either buy that product, or somebody else can leverage a EU GMP facility and take your product, if it's GACP, and get it into that EU GMP status.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's interesting because I don't want to date myself too much, but back in the 90s, I was I was actually a registered stockbroker, and I
Okay, yeah.
worked with a lot of folks in New York. It was a whole different era, practically a different life, it feels like to me. But it is nice for me to now be able to talk about these types of trades and business facilitation to really help create this market discussion in the way we are talking about, do we contract long term? Do we buy a spot price right now? How does that flow? This gives me hope for what at the GCNC we've always believed since we were founded, which is the more that we work together and the more that we help facilitate commerce around the world, the faster the industry really takes its place in the world as a true global market, which at times can make it difficult, but what it really does is encourages people to play to their strengths and
Hmm.
work with other people who are also playing to their strengths in a different market to create the best product available for patients and consumers around the world. So
Yeah.
it's great to see it, and I really have appreciated watching your guys' evolution also from really being Canada focused, and I know
Hmm.
that's still sort of your roots into the global platform. But talk to me a little bit about not only your company, but in
Hmm.
general, how you see and why you felt like the time was right to say, okay, we're not just going to focus on the Canadian exchange, but really do the play with the GCX.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to what you were talking about, in how do we create good, strong supply chains, right? And so, really, how I view our companies, we're a market organizer, right? So, in markets such as one like Florida, where it requires vertical integration, there isn't really a need for an exchange such as ourselves. But when you look at the global cannabis market, it is extraordinarily chaotic. You've got a variety of different growers in all different countries, buyers with different needs in all different countries, changing regulation, and also incredible market growth, right? So a lot of opportunity as well. And so that's really where there needs to be that value add that we can bring, where we can help buyers to run their procurement through us. So versus having to scale up and run a team of 5 people, they leverage us because we are already talking to all of these growers. We've created hubs. So in Montreal we have a hub, so a buyer can come look at 40, 60 different samples in one place versus having to fly all over the country, kind of thing, right? And doing the same thing in other locations where we're starting to see good quality and consistent growing happening, which is happening all over the world, Thailand, places like that. So that's really where we also wanted to support our Canadian growers, right? I mean, the Canadian market has been really tough. We've seen incredible amounts of taxation domestically, and the global market offers an opportunity for better margin for a lot of these growers, right? So we'd be doing a disservice to our growers if we weren't trying to bring them international deals and international buyers and helping them to navigate this extraordinarily complex and changing world of what is EU GMP? Who can take what? Can I take GACP? Can it be, a GACP equivalent? All of these types of questions. So, we work with a lot of micros, a lot of medium, small growers. And so that's always our focus as well, is how can we help them grow their business and help create stability for them as well. So.
Yeah, it's great. When you look at the global marketplace, from our perspective at the moment, we have two primary continental hubs. One is North America, the other is Europe, and then
Mhm.
we've been heavily involved in the emerging market spaces in Latin America, South
Mhm.
America. Um, I'm excited because I get to sit on somebody else's webinar tomorrow and hear from a bunch of companies in Africa that
Yep.
are growing and emerging. But when you look at sort of emerging markets around the world and what you're keeping your eyes on
Mhm.
for expansion, which markets do you find interesting from a potential growth, challenges, whatever that is that you think is going to be really relevant to the expansion of these global landscapes?
Yeah, so I mean, Europe obviously remains a huge amount of potential still for, growers all over the world, also Canadian growers. The reclassification we saw in Germany, I think we're going to see incredible growth in 2025 there. Just a lot of demand for consistent supply. And that's, I think, the big thing in the medical market that is very different than a rec market, is that demand for it has to be consistent. And that is, growing cannabis, consistently grown product, it's a challenging business. Growers in Canada have been doing it for a long time, and I think that's why they've kind of held that competitive edge. But I mean, you're seeing growers in other countries, like you said, in Africa, South Africa, Thailand. You're seeing sort of an export of knowledge from Canada and the United States to these countries, setting up similar indoor, outdoor greenhouse grows, and those products are going to be competing with Canadian product. But I think that demand for consistent product is, we hear it from buyers every day right now, and we're definitely starting to feel that crunch, that the competition for good supply is definitely going to increase over 2025. Poland just released that they're increasing 20 tons in 2025. They've allowed that. I think the UK is barely, a tip of the iceberg when you look at the size of that population. So I think, Europe is a ton of opportunity. And then obviously looking into Asia, as some of the CBD requirements are starting to change in Japan, that to me sort of signals that potentially in time, you could see other medical markets open up there, which would be incredible. But Thailand, I think, is also a really interesting country and will be likely one of the big competitors from a sort of cultivation standpoint in the future for sure. Seeing some obviously like into Australia, competition there. Growers are growing in Australia now, but then they're also looking for export as well. Like, so product is moving out of Australia as well now too. I think where challenges might come in is, the buzzword of this week, tariffs. But just, at what point, I've heard of talk of things like that in places like Australia, potentially, that have their own supply. Would there be some sort of limitation on Canadian or other countries' products coming into there? So those are all things that we're all kind of keeping our eye on into the next few years.
Yeah, this podcast will likely air here in a couple of weeks. So the tariffs discussion, for those listening, it didn't just start, but it just sort of went into action hot and heavy here over the last 2 days. And certainly on the North American continent, I think everybody's scratching their heads a little bit about the logic. One thing I will say for the global cannabis industry is that if we got to the point where people at a federal level of government, wherever you are, saw it as a substantive enough market that they were really interested in creating tariffs, I would say that would be a great battle to fight, because we will have finally got there to where people were feeling like a market was large enough and substantive enough within their nation to protect it.
Mhm.
I'm From an economic policy perspective, I am not generally a fan of isolationist policies or tariffs, but I don't think most people who run businesses are.
No,
Um,
no.
but I do think that you're right. Looking especially at markets like Australia, as you said, they've been a very interesting market for a while now because of the trade relationships with Europe, right? And
Mhm.
so they've been a interesting pathway, for example, for South American countries to partner
Yeah.
with Australian companies in order to backdoor into Europe. And as Africa continues to rise and those traditional trade routes that
Mhm.
exist between agricultural products in Africa moving north. And hopefully at some point we can have a rational discussion around the same type of thing out of South America and Latin America in general
Yeah.
into other parts of North America. We're a little bit far off from any kind of rational discussion at the moment, but I think your platform and the adaptability that you guys have to be able
Mhm.
to move with the markets, to me, makes you an incredibly valuable, well, GCNC member, but also just an incredibly valuable asset to the industry as a whole. It really fills a huge gap that not too many people. I won't say you're without competition. That's not true, but it is certainly true that I would say you're one of the leading people in this space that really seems to understand how it all flows. So if I think we should talk a little bit about, if I'm a buyer or a seller,
Yeah.
like how do you engage in that conversation? Because this is normal behavior for many industries, but it is not
Mhm.
normal behavior yet for cannabis. So
Yeah.
like what does that process look like for someone?
Yeah, so we have, we've got a broker over in Portugal, Rob Smallman. He's our VP of operations out there. We've got a broker we've launched in California now as well. And then we've got a team of 6 brokers here in Canada and a full back office with data support, analyst support, BD coordination, all of that kind of stuff. And so really the way it works is a buyer seller, you come to us and we just look at, okay, we need your licenses. You sign our standard client agreement. And what that means is that everybody's operating underneath the same terms and conditions. So what that allows is that, in the 11th hour, you're not revamping a contract. Sellers are protected. They're not using, a 1 or 2 page supply contract that the buyer brought. On the other side, we also have, you know, a deep history with a lot of LPs in Canada. So we know, you know, who we can really steer the conversation into, you know, who makes the best sense for your needs. So a group comes to us, you sign our client agreement, and then you're engaged with us. And we're 100% success driven. So you get access to you'll get a broker identified to you. That's your broker. You can call them, email them if you've got questions. Hey, what's going on with this? I've heard about this. I need this. I'm looking to access this market. We're already, you know, let's say they're like, yeah, we're already selling to Australia, but we're really wanting to break into Europe, kind of thing. So great, awesome. We'll still, you know, if we see demand coming out of Australia that would maybe your product be a fit, we'll bring it, but our focus for you will largely be those European buyers, those types of things. So you get a real tailored approach based on, okay, where is your business at? What kind of product are you growing? If it's a buyer, similarly, right? You know, does the stable of supply we see in Canada, is it a fit for what you're looking for? Or maybe it's something where, yeah, we look somewhere like Colombia or South Africa, Lesotho, those places where we can connect in maybe a different type of product, different price point. So it all comes down to what your business needs are. And that's where the platform is an amazing tool in the exchange, you know, for this price discovery. But at the end of the day, we're really in the relationship business. We want to, the closer we understand your business and what you're trying to do, the better we can help you. And that's really where we become like that, you know, a partner in your operations in terms of your success. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that system, especially in the current market today. There's so many systems where it's fully automated, and
Yeah.
I know that having that kind of automation and platform is important to helping optimize the experience and the speed. At the same time, having people that actually know what they're doing behind the scenes and can talk the game correctly
Yeah.
is important. And one thing that I have also observed, which you guys are answering already with your Canadian platform, is especially smaller cultivations, smaller
Mhm.
farms have
Yeah.
a difficult time frequently figuring out, how do I do this? Like,
Yeah.
what is the best way for me to get my product into market, especially if they're in a market that's currently down?
Yeah.
You know, being able to open up your book a little bit and say, hey, just because it's down here doesn't mean that you have to take that if there's opportunities elsewhere. If you're doing a good job, if you're building to the right kind of standards and you have the
Yeah.
licenses, your market is not limited to your immediate geography. And no matter what your size is. Well, that's
Yeah.
probably not true. If you got 10 plants in the back, that's probably not enough. But if you're scaling and
Yeah.
doing things the right way, it certainly is.
Yeah, and that's where like we'll talk to growers about, you know, what is your appetite to be, you know, the exporter of record, or would you prefer to maybe sell to another domestic group, you know, get GACP certified, sell to another domestic group. You're still going to get a higher price point, but you're not necessarily dealing in that export process. Then there's other companies that are like, yeah, no, we're happy. We want to learn that process. We want to take that on. And so then we help to facilitate that as well. All of those types of things. And it's, you know, and it'll change too, right? As maybe you get like a couple more deals done, you get GACP certified, then maybe you're able to grow, you know, do some more domestic deals, and then, okay, great, now we can access that market. Because I would say that is the big thing too, is the obviously international supply chains, due to a lot of, you know, there's facility qualifications that often have to be done by buyers. It's just it's a longer lead time, longer supply time, right? So that's really where we can help come look in and, okay, looking at your cash flow, what your needs are now, like how much do you want to earmark to sell right now versus in the future, and trying to find that mix as well. Because I also think it is really important for growers to also focus on their domestic market. Obviously, Canada has one of the more robust domestic markets outside of the United States, but it's to not also just focus on global. Like, how do you also continue to facilitate transactions here? Because if you do lose, a big buyer internationally. It's going to take time to sometimes backfill those supply chains. So you may want to keep in that domestic market as well. So just keeping like a diversified portfolio, I feel like as much as you can. And that's really where we're helping growers do that without having to have too much, additional staff to manage that.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate the perspective so much, Erin, and the background on how you guys are operating and the markets you're serving. Every time I talk to you or anyone on your team, I learn new things and relearn some things that, I was dealing with 30 years ago
Yeah.
that they said is now really cool to be seeing in cannabis again. A business lesson takeaway for me from this discussion is certainly like if you put in the time to get the right certifications, if you're willing to be pragmatic in your business planning and think through what you were just discussing, which is what is my local market, what is my domestic market, what is the potential for my international market. If you start thinking about those things, not just today, but
Mm-hmm.
really projecting those out, which is often hard for cannabis companies
Yep.
because people are so focused on just making it till tomorrow or
Yeah.
next week. But
Yeah.
if you can set that panic or like reflex, which believe me, everybody, I understand very well,
Mm-hmm.
aside a little bit and do both that short and that long-term planning, like it really can pay off and your price points will go up and your margins will get bigger and your costs will go down because all of that scaling gives you that kind of ability and adaptation. Um, and certainly at the GCNC, we're always excited to connect folks that help facilitate all of that, and
Yeah.
certainly happy to have you guys on board as well in that never-ending battle to help grow the global economy.
Yeah, and I think like that's a big thing. Like you talked a bit about competitors, like there's other brokers out there. We, are always very friendly with them. I think there's, what we really like to see though is a simplification of supply chains. When we first started in the Canadian market, there'd be, three, four maybe people in the middle of a deal. It creates a lot of noise, a lot of chaos. So really trying to just simplify, who are you working with? Are you working with the actual end buyer and the actual seller? Those types of things. And that just comes with
Huge
like,
margin
yeah,
compression too, right? Like it
totally.
just
And that's part of
kills the
it.
profitability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's lots of space for other brokers. It all helps to create those sort of standards of, what does good business look like for cannabis, all working together. And that's where, yeah, your guys' network, I think, is incredible about just sharing information, challenges, how are we all approaching these markets? It's not often that we come across industries like this where, what is it going to look like in 5 years? And we don't really know, what is going to be recreationally legal? What is going to be medical? Is it going to be, ring fenced in certain countries and not? And so like that adds a challenge when you're trying to long-term plan when what is that market, and that exists in a lot of markets, unknown regulatory changes, but it's just such a huge part of what the market's going to look like. And so I think the more that, more information people have, the more conversations you have, all of those things just help to really structure, okay, what should we do now? And how should we be preparing in the next year, 2 years to take advantage if this happens or X happens, those types of things.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep working on it together. So thanks so much, Erin, for joining us today
Yeah.
on the GCNC Worldview. And I need to give a shout out to sponsors like Emerald Lane Recruiting and Bovida, both who are great multi-year supporters of the GCNC and the Worldview. Without them, these types of conversations aren't possible. So, and I should also mention that the Global Cannabis Exchange has also been supportive of us at our C-suite connectors and such in Berlin and Vegas. So thank you, Erin, for that continued support on our end as well. We always like to bring people together, and that
Yep.
includes this podcast. So if y'all haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that little button, subscribe, keep following each week as we put these out. So until next time, everybody, have a great week.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.